Hey, so today we're going to talk about this concept right over here, which is improving layout. Why would you need to do this? Well, if you're using a software all the time, and this particular software is slowing you down because of a design issue, and it's not within your means to actually re-implement directly, then what do you do? What do you do when you have lots of teammates in a company all using the same software, but yet this is brought to you by a third party? Do you apply to that third party software vendor to change everything for you? That's never going to happen. They'll be more than willing to say, you're one of our corporate customers, you can go ahead and please go on to our forum and log a feature request or something, and then you will sit there for 3 to 4 years waiting, right? So that's not going to work. So the example we're going to show today is in a EMR, an electronic medical record system. You, on a regular basis, are pulling up patients amongst doing other items. But we'll look at what's usually called here a Quickview page regarding the patient. And you'll see what I mean when it comes down to needing some streamlining, some improvements there to make the workflow look better. So let's check it out. So here we are in this fictitious patient's Quickview. And I will give you a quick tour of the sections and the meaningfulness of it. So this is pretty nice for notes. You're going to use this section all the time for balances, wanting to tell the patient if they owe something. But then you start entering fluff. And when you're in sections that are just all fluff and no stuff, you're wasting time. You're going to have to literally scroll through all this stuff here. So let's look at this. This privacy information is not meaningful outside of changes, right? And the changes that might happen for that patient are probably only going to be made when they're brand new. And then you're never going to look at this stuff unless you need to. So if I don't need to see this, why do I have to always scroll through it to get to the meat? The next section down is very similar as well. This information is not going to change very often. And I'm not going to need to access it that often because all of this stuff is perfectly redundant. Like if I need to know the legal sex or the name or the date of birth, I kind of have all that stuff right up here in this header that is always on the page. So this isn't necessary either. So now we found two whole sections here that are just not helping out. Here we're getting into more meaningful information that I would be using on a regular basis. I need to call the patient. I need to send a letter to the patient. I need to email the patient. This stuff's kind of meaningful. And then here we are with driver's license and emergency contact. And you can see from here there is a crazy amount of white space here. You know, what is this white space doing? How is it helping me? Why do I need, if I'm looking at 100 patients a day, do I need to see and scroll through this white space? What is it doing for me? The other thing you can see in the right column, this patient photo is easily half the size of this section. Why do I need all of this extra white space here just to show the patient photo that I kind of already know? And then you get into a demographic section that will explain to you, maybe the language or the race or the ethnicity of the patient. Again, things that aren't changing or utilized on a regular basis. Very similar for here. If I need to come in and set a pharmacy or a laboratory for this particular patient, that's wonderful. But I don't need to see it all the time. And I especially don't need to see it when I'm getting to the meat of the page again. So just to recap, at the very top, the balance is meaningful. I'm going to use this all the time. These two sections are not meaningful. Here's now another meaningful, meaty section, followed by a lot of white space and demographics and financial stuff that I'm not going to use on a regular basis. And then finally, here we go at the bottom of the page, and I'm at a section that's going to help me out. So here at the bottom, I have access to the patient's insurance, which I'll be using on a regular basis. If they are ineligible for care, I'm going to want to know about it. I want to get to this section right away. And then the bottom section is ironically the most important, which is the appointments. So when's their last appointment, when's their next appointment, all this stuff is at the very, very bottom of the page. So how much time am I having to spend going through here if I'm doing this constantly through the day? So that's where this whole concept of improving the layout comes from. So if I just recap of what we saw, what is meaningful on this page that an employee of a medical practice is using all the time is the balances section at the top, the insurances section way at the bottom, along with the appointments. And everything in the middle is very debatable. I want to be able to still access it, but I don't need to see it. And it's not helping me. And if I have to do all this scrolling, there's a greater chance that I'm going to be missing because I have this manual labor that I have to accomplish in order to get to what I need to be at. So that's where we'd like to make some changes. So here are the changes that I'm proposing and that we ended up doing. So privacy section, let's collapse this if there were a way to do that. Identification and provider, let's collapse that if there's a way to do that. If I need to, I'd like to be able to open it up and make an edit, but otherwise I don't need to see it. How about this photo here? All this, it's twice the size, this section, because of the photo. So we've got this area here. Why don't we just move that photo here and compress the size of this section by half? And then this demographic section I don't need to see unless I'm going to make an edit or do something. So let's kind of collapse that. And that will leave us with the sections that we really care about. So which would be insurances and appointments. What is the size of this? It's quite large right now, the length of the page. But what you can do, you're able to actually accomplish this through what are called Userscripts. So what's a Userscript? It's a piece of JavaScript that you can utilize to instrument an existing web page. So that's what I'm going to do with the layout, and I'll show you exactly how that worked out. Let me click over, if I could, just to an example of that code. So you can take a peek. All right, so I'm going to be utilizing CSS, and I'm also going to be utilizing some JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply hide sections I don't want to see. And then I'm going to create special headers for these sections that are optional that I'd like to open up for the correspondence section, for the demographics and the facility section. And I'm going to go ahead and execute this code every time this particular view appears. So what does this end up looking like? The other thing to do is with the photo, I'm going to take the photo and try to move it, but let's take a peek at how that would work. So here we are on the exact same page, but in this case, when it loads, the Userscript detects that we're not only on this domain, but we are viewing the patient's Quickview, and it executes. So what it does is, what I mentioned earlier, it's going to collapse this privacy section. It's going to collapse this identification provider section that we, again, very rarely use. It's going to provide here on the side some cues that if you go ahead and click on them, you're able to open them. For example, I'll click on privacy if I needed to, and it's going to expand up. Well, I, of course, don't need it, so I can just press it again and collapse that section. And the same thing goes with the identification and provider section. I'm not using that this much, so I'm going to keep that closed. So all I see here, again, are the sections I care about. I see the balances, I see the contact information, I see the emergency info, and as I mentioned, I wanted to go ahead and move this photo, so I just moved it over here. And here we are below. We have another section here for facilities and demographics, which again, we don't care that much about. We're not changing it very much. We're not reading it very much. So we're going to keep that area closed unless you want to look at them. And instead, you're just going to see this insurances section and the appointment section. Now, again, if this is something that you're using once a day, it's not a big deal. But when you have people accessing these hundreds of times a day, it starts to be costly. So if we go back to the original, and we see how big this is. This section here that we were looking at is occupying 2,726 pixels of height. And if we go back to the one that after the Userscript is implemented, that one's using just 1,595 pixels of height. So by making these types of changes, we've effectively been able to, if you look at the bottom here, reduce the footprint of the page, at least the height footprint, by over 40%. So this is just a simple example of how we can leverage user scripts to weave them into the web app of a piece of software that is not ours, and in so doing make people's lives easier, the consumers of these of this software, and that's what I recommend companies do when they don't have this stuff in their control. And I hope you enjoyed this quick preview into how we can weave user scripts into an existing web page and make lives easier by improving layout. Thanks a lot. Bye.